Hello, my name is Mr. Penny. I am a school counselor here at Abbey Kelly Foster, and this is our college information presentation, primarily for parents of juniors, but other parents of students in different grades may find it useful as well. Rather than have an event here at Abbey Kelly where the timing may not work, we decided to just make a video. That way you can watch it at your own schedule. You can watch it with your student. You can pause, go back, do whatever is convenient. I'm going to throw a lot of information at you. And so video format really might be the best way in case you need to go back, hear something again, look at a different slide, all that type of information. I will also say that these slides will be made available. They'll be posted on Google Classroom for all the students to see. So you can get it by going to your student's Google Classroom. You may also just, if you email me, I can send you and share the slides as well. So let's get started. So let's kind of lay the landscape. There are about 4,000 colleges in the United States. About 80% of them accept more than 50% of their applicants. So they're not super competitive. You have a very good chance of getting in as long as you kind of meet their benchmarks in terms of academic success. And bottom line, in the past couple of years, or even in the past decade, the highly selective schools are getting much harder to get into, and all other schools are getting easier to get accepted to. So that's good news, except for if you're really focused on some of those highly selective schools, because the chances of getting in are getting lower and lower. And we'll talk about why that is in a little bit. As a school counselor, I definitely stress with students to focus on fit over a specific major. And the reason for that is a student only has a 1 in 10 chance that they'll be doing anything connected to their major 10 years out of college. So oftentimes college is much more about building a skill set rather than what you specifically major in. There are, of course, exceptions to that. We wouldn't want a nurse working on us that majored in art, and we would not want someone engineering a bridge that majored in history. So there are definitely exceptions in programs where you very much need that specific degree. But in terms of the more general landscape of employment, employers are looking for a college degree to show that you have a basic skill set rather than a very specific major. I get often asked this question a lot. Is this a good school? So is Holy Cross a good school? Is Northeastern a good school? Is Worcester State a good school? And that's not the right question. The question has to be, is that a good college for me as a student? Does this reflect the work I've done in high school? Does this reflect my interests, programs I want to do in college, the right environment, the right campus, all of that type of stuff? So the answer might be different for every student, as to whether that's a good school for them or not. And the answer may not be the same, for the list of schools for each student. I really, really like this quote. College should be viewed as a match to be made, not a prize to be won. Sometimes students will tell me they applied somewhere just to see if they could get in, and that is not doing anyone any favors. That's just wasting everyone's time, the admissions officer, myself, the student, putting in that application. So we really want to be intentional about where we're applying, and it should only be applying to schools that there's an interest in attending. So not just seeing if you can get in, if you have no desire or intention to go there, if you're accepted. So just to give you a kind of sense of what the landscape is, so I included some schools which are from this extremely selective group. So Boston College, Boston University, Northeastern, those are probably three of our more popular schools that students apply to, especially some of our higher academic, high GPA students. Harvard would be obviously included with the Ivy League and other schools like that are just getting extremely, extremely hard to get into. Their admission rates tend to be between 3 and 5%. And when you factor in things like legacy admissions and athletic recruiting, it actually ends up getting even lower than that. Worcester State, state school, very kind of easy to get into as long as you've met kind of their academic benchmark and requirements. UMass Amherst is the hardest of the state schools in Massachusetts to get into, and their admission rate's about 64%, so not bad. About 2/3 of their applicants are getting in. That can vary by program. Some of their programs are very, very competitive, others not as much. And then I just included three, Worcester schools, Assumption, WPI, and Holy Cross. You can see they vary a lot in selectivity. So 86% with Assumption, 60% with WPI, and Holy Cross, 43%. However, the type of student who might be successful at these different colleges could be very different, depending on what you're looking for and what the schools are looking for. So over the past, decade or so, the top students from across the country, so we're talking thousands and thousands of students, are applying to about the same group of 200 schools. These would include things like the Ivy League or schools like Northeastern, Boston College, Boston University, in New England, other schools, Colby, Bates, Bowdoin in Maine, some of these very, very competitive schools, MIT, Stanford, UCLA, those, type of schools where they're high in the rankings. And so students who are only obsessed and focused on rankings are applying to these schools, but they may not be a good fit for everyone. They become very hard to get admitted to. They get a lot of media attention. That doesn't mean they're a good school for everyone. They want to make sure you're a match for them as well. So oftentimes I'll have students, maybe with a little lower GPA, so let's say a 2.5 or 3.0, applying to some of these schools. And the reality is they're not going to accept them with below a 4.0 GPA, and we have the data to back that up, that there are students, there are colleges where we've never had students with below a 4.0 GPA get accepted to. So we got to make sure it's the right academic fit for the student as well. But there are thousands of schools which are not in the super competitive category. And so that is good news. There are options out there, no matter what you're looking for, what programs, geographic area, anything like that. So how do we choose a college when there are these thousands of options? So how do we narrow it down? There are factors to think about. Location. So most students stay within about a 6-hour radius of where they live. That doesn't mean you have to. We've had students go to Hawaii, California, Texas, Florida, and some of them have gotten really good financial deals at those schools. Some of them gotten, a lot of IB credit, things like that. So you do not have to stay close to home, but most of our students do tend to do that. The academic environment, as we just touched upon, making sure that, you are a good fit for them based on things like their average GPA for admitted students, test scores, if they're, including that, all that type of stuff. Size, we're a very small high school. Some students are very comfortable in that smaller environment. Others want to get out of a smaller environment and meet lots and lots of people. So whether you go to a big school like UMass Amherst, which has 30,000 students, or a very small school like Anna Maria, which would maybe only have, barely over 1,000, those are type of things to consider. Diversity, we are a very diverse high school. Is that diversity important? We've had a very large uptick in students applying to HBCUs, or historically Black colleges and universities, in the past couple of years, which is great because obviously those are very diverse campuses. So students who want to be around students who look like them and are, taught by professors who look like them, that can be an important factor for many students. And so going to schools which maybe aren't, predominantly white in universities, institutions, or PWIs, that might be important to a student. It may not matter at all, but that can be a factor. Academics and admissions, and the type of school, whether it's 2-year, 4-year, public or private, and cost, which is usually the most important factor. So how do you choose a college? Continued, their admission standards, right? So are you able to get admission? Do you have a good chance of getting in? What do they have for internships, study abroad options, research opportunities? Can you do research as an undergrad if that's what you're interested in? Sports, music, clubs, if sports is important to you, are you able to continue playing the sport you want to? Is that going to mean playing at the club level or intramurals as opposed to playing for a Division 1, 2, or 3 school, which is obviously very hard to do, and few students go on to play, big time college sports and things like that. What do they have for music and clubs? What is the class size like? Do you want to be in auditoriums where you are one of 200 students, or do you want to be in a room with a professor where maybe there's 8 to 10 students? What's the campus like? Does it feel like home? All that type of stuff. What are the dorms like? School spirit, is it a suitcase school where most people are going home for the weekends, or is there a lot going on campus, a lot of activities, things like that? Transportation costs, obviously it would cost more to go to a school in California based on airfare and things like that than it would to go in Boston. So what kind of costs get added to that besides just tuition and room and board when you're thinking about transportation? So I can share these slides with you, but there are a number of links here to help you research colleges. So I'm just going to go through them one by one. So first is College Navigator, which is a site run by the government. If there's information about a college, it is in College Navigator. It's very extensive. There's a lot of information about each college in College Navigator. It's a really useful tool. You can do a search based on what you're looking for, see what schools pop up as matches, and use that. SCORE, again, is our main college research website. So that is one students have access to. They can do college searches on there. That's also the platform they'll use to keep track of their applications, when they've applied, things like that. So SCORE gets used very frequently, especially toward the end of junior year and during senior year. The college websites have tons of information on them as well. Any school will have a website. You can go there to learn more about that school, perhaps do a virtual tour, and just get the kind of their pitch, and what's their admissions kind of sales pitch on their website. MIFA Pathways is a great site. It has a college search feature. It also has a bunch of information about paying for college. MIFA is a great organization. They run a lot of parent webinars and sessions about paying for college, which are very, very helpful. College fairs, there are college fairs in the spring and fall, which we do advertise. Some are right in Worcester, which you can go and see, all the different admission reps, and talk to them, learn more about their school. I do post, dates and locations for those, for the ones that are nearby. The College Tour is a great website to do virtual tours. So if you're interested in a school that may be a little farther away, you can use the College Tour to kind of do a virtual tour and get more information that way. College Board is just another good search site. You can do a search based on what you're looking for. I always tell the students you wouldn't buy a car without taking a test drive, and the campus visit is your test drive with a college. So I definitely highly encourage taking tours of campuses, whether that be over the summer or in the fall or at open houses. You definitely want to see it before you make any decisions about whether you're going to go there, definitely. But even, if you can visit campuses before you apply, that is a worthwhile technique. Info sessions, tours, all the colleges have those. Sometimes they're on weekends, sometimes they're on school days. And also many schools have admission reps who come and visit us here at Abbey Kelly, so students can sign up for some of those visits as well. You can get information from family, friends, and relatives who've gone to different schools, but I would take that with a grain of salt because the student experience might be different than a friend or a relative, going to that school. Some just quick information that's good to know. What's the graduation rate of a school? How about the persistence rate, which is the number who go from freshman year to sophomore year? All that information is available on College Scorecard. You can easily find, what their rates are, and obviously the higher rates, the better chance a student has of being successful there. A very low graduation rate could be a red flag that maybe that isn't the best academic fit for a student. So in terms of research, this is from SCORE, and we can look at Abbey Kelly students from the past however many years. You can filter it, but this is Northeastern University, so you can see that in terms of GPA, most students have had a pretty high GPA who've gotten into that school, and SAT scores we'll talk about in a little bit. Not often that might not be the best metric to measure by anymore. But you can get for any school this research on the scattergrams and see how Abbey Kelly students have done. So we want our list to be balanced. We want, it's okay if a couple of them are reaches or a stretch where admission is very competitive, definitely not a definite, but we don't want our whole list to be reaches. Targets are a good fit. You meet their GPA requirements, that we want our bulk of our list to be targets. Safety school, one or two, that you'll definitely be assured to get into. That could be a community college, or maybe a state school with a higher admission rate, or even a private school with a higher admission rate. But we also want financially feasible schools. So we want at least one or two on our list to be what I call a financial safety school. And that means if you didn't get a lot in financial aid, you would still be able to attend that college. Cost usually is the biggest factor for any students. Should be a good fit too. It doesn't have to be in Massachusetts. There are some out-of-state public schools which can be affordable. There's a program which I have linked here, which is called Tuition Break, where for certain majors you can get in-state tuition at schools in New England. So that can be a really good thing, especially if schools have a major that you are interested in at that school. It is specific though, so you do need to qualify using specific majors. And if you change your major, you do lose that tuition benefit. But that's a pretty good way to lower the cost, especially at out-of-state public schools. Now, when we're talking about aid, there is two types of aid: need-based and merit-based. So need-based is just based on your income, which is done, when we apply for financial aid through the FAFSA, which we'll talk about in a minute, but also merit-based. So merit-based does not look at your financial situation. It might be based on grades, athletics, certain skills, anything like that. So some schools do not give out merit aid, and you can only get need-based aid. So if you are maybe not going to qualify for a lot in financial aid, maybe looking at schools which have better merit aid policies to try to get some of those scholarships than need-based ones. Most colleges do not meet a student's full need. There are some schools that do. There are schools that do meet 100% of need. However, those schools are in that group that are in the hardest in the country to get into. So you definitely need to be academically very, very strong candidates to get into most of those schools. Any school on its website will have a net price calculator, and this will give you an estimate of what it's going to cost to go there. If it takes a little while to fill out, then it's probably a pretty good indicator of what you might pay. If it's just a couple questions, probably not very accurate, but many of them are very, very good, and that might keep a school on the list or eliminate it based on you and your family saying we could never afford that cost, or we could. That doesn't look too bad, but a net price calculator is a good starting point just to see what a school might cost. And then a lot of focus in the past couple of years has been, put on return on investment, or ROI. So there's a website here which looks at the return on investment of different colleges and programs and things like that. So you can see, are the graduates getting a good return on investment? Are they making a lot of money? Is it taking them a long time to pay off their debts? All those type of things. So schools are definitely not equal in that area. So you can look at return on investment through that link there. With your student, I would have a conversation about finances. You can plan accordingly, but just having an honest conversation of this is what we're going to contribute, if anything, or the costs are all going to be you being responsible for that as a student. So there are a lot of kind of questions and answers that families might need to do that, but the earlier you do that, the smoother your process is going to be. I hate to see it happen, but it does, where a student gets into a school they really, really want to go to, but the finances just don't work out. And if maybe the family had had that conversation a little earlier, it wouldn't be such a disappointment when they, have to choose to not go there. Scholarships are also extremely important. I post scholarships in Google Classroom as I get them, but also there are, search engines. Going Mary is a really good one we partner with to find scholarships that a student qualifies for. So now let's get into the nuts and bolts of actually applying. Students will ask two teachers for recommendations. They'll put the request into SCORE so that we can keep track of who's been asked and who's writing letters and all that type of stuff. So that's an easy process, but students should be thoughtful about who they're asking and making sure that the teacher is going to say something good about them. One of the things I definitely highly recommend students do is get their college essay done over the summer. If you can come into senior year with your essay done and in pretty good shape, you are in really good position to have a successful college application season. They do start working on the essays in their junior English classes, so they do get a head start. But if you can finish those and have them in a really good place over the summer, that is a leg up. Also, there are a number of resources in Google Classroom related to the essay, some articles, some links, for students who are maybe confused about what to write about for their college essay. You also want to update your profile in SCORE. This is a list of anything you've done throughout high school. It could be jobs, clubs, community service, sports teams, anything like that you've done, basically that's extracurricular. It could also be, things like I have to babysit a sibling 10 hours a week. Because we want to know how you're spending your time outside of school. But you can update that right in SCORE, and that way we get a sense of what you've done, and that way I can highlight some of those things in my counselor letter that I have to write for everyone. And teachers also use that to kind of understand what the student's been doing. Most schools accept something called the Common App. So the Common App is a pretty easy way to apply to colleges. It lets you use one application and send it to a number of different places. So as long as a school is on the Common App, which most are, it's very, very easy to apply and submit those applications. You can't start working on it until after October 1st. That's when they August 1st, sorry. That's when they roll everything over. So you can create an account after August 1st, start working on your applications. And that's something that, we'll go over as well with the students. We'll talk about test scores in a little while, but sending official score reports for tests is the student responsibility. So they have to send their scores to colleges if they want them included. Ideally, I want a student to apply to 5 to 10 colleges. Below 5 limits options, and above 10 can create problems of choice at the end. But we want to be really intentional about those 5 to 10. We want it to be a balanced list between, targets, reaches, and safety schools, and also have at least 1 or 2 financially feasible kind of safety schools as well. So that's kind of what we're shooting for in terms of actually submitting applications to colleges. If right now the school is 30 schools of interest, that's fine. But by the end, we want that narrowed down to about 5 to 10. So let's talk about testing. Now, most schools are test optional, meaning that you are not required to submit test scores. However, that doesn't mean that you can't take them and see how you do. And if you are in kind of the range that they're looking for, submit your scores. That can help strengthen your application. If you're not in their range, then you obviously would not want to submit them. It's not going to help your application. So there are 2 main standardized tests, the SATs and ACTs. We recommend that if you are testing, you take them twice. So once in the spring. I know some students took them in March, some may be taking them in May, or there's a June test. And that kind of can be a first time, give you a baseline of how you did. You can get free practice on Khan Academy to improve your test scores. And then in either August, September, October, take them for a second time. We definitely don't recommend taking them more than 2 times. Scores don't tend to change a whole lot after that second time. And we don't want you to stress about it, especially with so many schools being test optional. But if it's going to help your application, you should absolutely submit it. ACT is just a different test. It is, some people say the language is friendlier. There's a science component, so some students might do better on that. However, I have found that there's generally not a huge difference between SAT and ACT scores when you compare them for students. So what goes to these schools? Your transcript, your grades, your GPA, your class rank, your Q1 report card. So all those things get sent to the colleges. If you are sending scores, those will be sent as well. But what are they looking for? They want to see your academic rigor. Are you taking challenging classes, especially with these more selective schools? Have you challenged yourself? The application itself, so your information, all kind of the basic information that you're providing them, your essay, and your interest level. So there is a thing in college admissions called demonstrated interest. And some colleges want to know, how you've interacted with them. Have you taken a tour? Have you met with an admissions person here at Abby Kelley? Have you gone to an open house and met someone there? Have you interacted with their website or social media? All of those things can demonstrate your interest level. And for some schools, that is important. They want to know that you want to go there. So by showing that effort, you're showing them you care about going to that school. You'll have 2 teacher and 1 guidance counselor letters of recommendation, your essay, and some schools do offer an interview, especially for some of the more selective schools, which can be part of it as well. Now, maybe you're thinking about a community college, which is a 2-year program. So someplace like Quinsigamond Community College or Mount Wachusett Community College. So as long as you graduate high school, you can be accepted to these schools. So the only application material needed is the actual application and your transcript. So it's a very streamlined, easy application process for community colleges. You can get an associate's degree or you can transfer for a bachelor's degree after your 2 years. It's a very affordable option. There are some downsides. The actual amount of students who end up transferring for a bachelor's degree from community colleges is very, very low. And the percentage of students who actually get their associate's degree is also very low. That doesn't mean it's not a great route, but I just want to give you that caveat that those downsides do exist. So thinking about yourself as a student and thinking about colleges, is there a special talent you have, whether you're an athlete or a musician? Your talent may match that college's need. Are you a legacy? Do you have some colleges use legacy admissions and give advantages to people whose parents went to certain schools or maybe grandparents? So is that, working in your favor? But think about it, from the college's perspective too. They're trying to build diverse classes. They want to have balances in gender, ethnicity, geographical diversity. There is a current Supreme Court case which may end the use of race and ethnicity in admissions. So we'll have to watch how that plays out, but it's just an interesting development, and we'll have to see how that impacts admissions. But your level of admissions interest in the school is part of it as well. So how do you apply? There are different timelines. So regular admission is usually due in January or February. That doesn't mean you have to wait till then. You can get it in much earlier. But most of our students apply early action. Now, early action is usually between October and November, possibly December. And really the advantage is you apply early and you find out early. So this is not binding in any way. If you get in, you aren't committed to going there. But most of our students use early admission to see if they get into their schools they're interested in. And usually you hear by like New Year's. So the advantage is you kind of, if you apply to all your schools early action, you'll kind of know where you stand much earlier than many other students. Early decision is different. You can only apply early decision to one school and it is binding, meaning if you are accepted to that school, you are committing to go there. There are sometimes higher admission rates with early decision at these very selective schools, but you don't know what the cost you're going to pay is. So that can be troublesome for most families. So for example, let's say you decided to apply early decision to Boston College. If you were admitted, you're committed to go there. There are ways to break an early decision agreement, but you have to be able to show that the financial aid they gave you is not feasible. And so it's a big, long process. So really, early decision should not be something taken lightly, and it should be for your number one dream school, and you will definitely go there if you're accepted. And most students don't have that in the fall of their senior year. They don't know that information. So early decision is definitely a lot more rare. Rolling admissions just means there's no hard deadline. They'll get a decision to you after you apply. So that's kind of nice that there's no set deadline. You apply when you can. And then open admissions will be someplace like a community college, where as long as you meet their baseline high school diploma requirement, you'll be accepted there. So what should you be doing now? Going to college fairs, going to take tours, visiting campuses. If you're thinking about standardized testing, taking those tests. There's information on registration for those in Google Classroom. Researching, narrowing, using all the resources in this PowerPoint, completing your essay and resume, and then meeting with me, which I regularly am meeting with students to talk about their plans. In senior year, you want to finalize that list, work on your essays, decide how you're going to apply, early action, early decision, regular, letting me know, communicating through things like SCORE. SCORE lets you keep a nice list of the schools you're thinking about applying to and when you've actually applied. So you just slide the colleges between the columns, which is nice. You're going to fill out all your applications, submit all your materials. The FAFSA is financial aid. Usually that opens up on October 1st. However, next year it may be later because they're revising the FAFSA. So it may not be ready by October 1st. But when it is available, you definitely want to apply for financial aid. Many private schools require an additional form called the CSS profile, and that is an additional financial document that will be required at many private colleges. Be aware of deadlines. You don't want to miss out on financial aid or anything like that, or just apply too late to get admitted. Your application and fee. So many schools do have an application fee. There are fee waivers for students who are free reduced lunch eligible. I will let those students know who they are, and that way they can apply those fee waivers and apply to college for free, which is nice. Most colleges have dropped their fees and just are making it free to apply, which is nice too, but many schools do still require that fee. You'll include your essay and activity list, your resume, so that they know what you've been doing, all that type of stuff. We'll send your letters of recommendation from myself and your teachers, your transcript, your grades, and those will be sent from me directly to the schools. So what is a parent's role in all of this? Well, number one, to have a conversation about that financial situation, to be a motivator, encourager, cheerleader, help organize information, maybe keep a calendar of deadlines, brainstorm and use some of these search tools together, go on road trips, visit campuses together, listen to the students' frustration through this process, and then perhaps maybe pay for applications, possibly. So we are an IB school, and there are not that many of them in New England. So credit policies can vary widely by college, and oftentimes the ones who are more friendly toward IB are not in this part of the country. So just getting into this a little bit, the most common credit policy is to only give credit for HL courses with a score of 4 or 5 or higher. Some schools do offer credit for SL courses. Sometimes it's a matter of a student having to advocate for themselves and talking with their professors or department chairs, showing them, course guides and things like that, especially if it's a school that's not as familiar with IB. We've had many students get credit for IB courses. Sometimes they just might have had to find, the right person on campus to talk to about that credit, and to, get their scores too. Most colleges have their IB credit policies on their websites, but again, many of the friendlier ones, and there are some lists here in that link, are not in this part of the country. We have had students also apply abroad. That can be a great value in studying at an international university. Most of them have English-speaking programs in many European countries and obviously Canada, things like that. So, but in many other parts of the world, the IB scores may be much more high stakes in terms of admission to those schools. You can't use financial aid at most foreign universities, but because of the costs are much lower, it oftentimes can be sometimes cheaper to go to a school internationally than in the United States. But obviously, you have to consider things like transportation costs and a student being comfortable out of their comfort zone, living in a foreign country. So just some things to think about. Lastly, do you like the idea of being the smartest student in your class or surrounded by really smart kids? What do you want the academic environment to be like on campus? Do you already kind of know what you want to study, or do you have a lot of options? Do you like the idea of meeting new people every day, or going to a smaller school where you're going to know people much, more intimately? Do you like the familiar, or do you want to go to a new part of the country, meet students from across the world? Do you want to be highly collaborative, or do you like competition? And that can be different by college campus. Apply early. They know who waited to the last minute to submit their applications. So get your applications in early, give you that, little advantage. Admissions people are, humans. And so are they going to be in a better mood when they're reading their 10th application versus their 10,000th? That's probably, something to consider. Make sure the student is driving the process. It shouldn't be parents contacting colleges. You can be a sounding board, but you shouldn't be filling out anything or writing any essays for the students. That definitely should be the student responsibility. And then again, I've already talked about these rates a little bit, but really focusing on retention rates, how many are coming back for their sophomore year, graduation rates, and placement rates. So are they getting jobs after college and things like that? And all that information, again, is available in things like College Scorecard or College Navigator. And that can give you a sense of is a school a red flag? Are their rates really low for that? Or is it a place where people are being successful? So I know this isn't a live session, but if you have any questions, here's my contact information. You can certainly call me, send me an email. I'd love to meet with you. If you want to come in and have a meeting with your student, that is definitely a possibility. But if there's any questions or you would like these slides from this presentation shared with you, I could certainly do that as well. So thank you very much for watching if you've made it this far. And please feel free to reach out with any questions. Thank you.